So without further ado, this is Dr. Sarah Mwangi. She is the Assistant Superintendent at Joplin School District. And also, along with that assistant superintendency, she is the curriculum director overall. It is a big school, though. So the nice thing is they have opened up some other kind of assistant, right, curriculum directors, Libby?
I'm actually the elementary curriculum coordinator.
Coordinator. Okay. So they've done that. It's a big school. It's nice to have it happen that way. So anyways, they are going to talk with you guys. Their title is called Building Foundations, Empowering Education for Early Literacy Success. And I love that in here, I do want you guys to know, Dr. Mwangi and Libby, that we have a wide range of students in here because literacy is important in every facet of education. So we have elementary ed majors, we have middle school majors, we have secondary majors, as well as K-12 majors as well. So like our PE, art, music. So you guys have everyone in here. So I will turn it over to you guys. Before I do, how would you like for questions? Do you want them to wait till the end to ask questions, or how would you like that to take place?
I would love if it happened throughout because
Okay.
we may kind of alter what we share based on, I want it to be meaningful for you.
Perfect.
I would hate for you to fall asleep during it. So
They
yeah,
won't.
or questions you have. So this particular presentation has some different interactive pieces. So, and
Perfect.
because they all don't have a computer and you're together, I'll probably just have you use your hand to show me a few things, and I'll probably adjust some of the questions as we kind of move forward. So I am going to attempt to share my screen, but I don't know if it's going to let me.
We have our IT in here who can help out. Kyle Van can help out with that too. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you guys. And if there are questions, I have a microphone so I can walk around as there are questions by our students.
Libby, can you share on your side?
That's what I'm checking. Hold on just a second.
You can. Okay,
But I need this is.
So guys, this is going to be really fun because she's going to be sharing screen and she's going to have to predict where I am and talking to you as we kind of move forward. So welcome. Hopefully you've had a good morning and a good start to your school year. My name is Sarah Mwangi, Assistant Superintendent here in Joplin. And Libby is the other one that Mrs. Wieselmeyer introduced. And really the purpose of this presentation is just to help you understand two things, kind of our journey, but then also how you kind of play into that role as you start entering the educational system, whether it be a high school PE teacher all the way down to an elementary first grade teacher, which is going to have a lot of early literacy. So we're going to tell you a little bit of our story, and then we'll just kind of field your questions and kind of work throughout the content as we go. So, and we'll speed up a little bit. I think we've got about 30 minutes left, so we may fast forward through a few parts. Like introducing ourselves. We're going to move on. So if you will just, by a show of hands, when you look up here at the screen, you are back into the groove of things. So I put numbers up there. So just show me 1, 2, 3, 4, how you're feeling, whether it's, and let's specifically talk about your current college experience, and we'll make your teachers turn their heads. So are you 1, 2, 3, or 4 so far for this first semester? If you just hold your hand up, I'm going to attempt to kind of see you. Oh, well, you got a little bit of everything in there. Yeah, I love the 4. Over to my left, you've got a black shirt on. You're like rocking in happiness over there. So very cool. Okay. Libby, if you want to. So this next slide may not make a lot of sense to you because, oh, go back one. How successful is your current literacy system in your school district? So why don't you just tell me, because you may not know what this actually is, reflect on your knowledge of a literacy system. what is a literacy system? So let's go. 1, the perfect side would be, yes, I know what it is. 2, I kind of have an idea. 3, I don't really know. 4, you're speaking a foreign language. I have no earthly idea what you're talking about. So when you think of a literacy system in a school or a district, where's kind of your knowledge level with that?
Okay, I don't know. Maybe.
No. Yeah, 4, you can be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, very good. Well, when you think of a literacy system, and one of the things within Joplin that we have kind of experienced is you can easily get caught, what I would say is like on a hamster wheel, where you're doing a lot of things and you're really, really busy. And you feel like you're accomplishing a lot, but then when you reflect on your data and you really look at how your system is working, you may not be actually making the progress that you want to. So a literacy system within a school or a district really is about what do we do in the general classroom? And then when kids aren't getting that information, what do we do to make sure we support them? So in an elementary school, it's going to look like, and specific to Joplin, it's going to look like our Title I intervention teachers. If you're in elementary, and I'm not sure, Mrs. Wieselmeyer, where they're at in their journey, because I know elementary people have to go observe some of those classrooms. So you may or may not be familiar with that if you've had that experience yet. When you get to middle school and high school, you're really dealing with a couple of layers. You're dealing with, maybe it's an advisory period where the reading teacher works with a few students on some skills that they're lacking. It also could be a specific course that we're offering that's beyond what all general education students may receive. And so for us at the middle school and high school level, those are different course offerings that we have. And it's not just for special education students. We have opportunities for kids who still may be struggling with reading, even when you get to middle school or high school. So as we kind of move forward, you'll kind of hear our journey, especially at the elementary level, of how we kind of navigated doing a lot and not really getting very far. And it wasn't for a lack of trying. So we'll kind of talk you through that. But to kick us off, go to the next slide here. This is going to be fun. Libby and I are just going to like keep dancing back and forth between these.
Oh, sorry.
You're good.
There you go.
So really our purpose and our outcomes for you in this session is for you to understand kind of our journey and then how teacher leadership plays into that. And you may be sitting thinking, I'm just a college student, so what does this really mean to me? You will be entering into your systems when you become a teacher with more knowledge, hopefully with more knowledge than your teachers who are currently in the classrooms where they left college at, because there's even the fact of this event today, there's a lot more focus on literacy today than there was even when I left Missouri Southern. And so that's across the nation. That's in a lot of our universities where that conversation is really picking up. So you're going to be coming in with a lot of tools in your tool belt compared to when many of us started teaching and we were navigating some of these literacy hurdles. So don't underestimate kind of your power, but we're going to take a strategic focus on early literacy, but there's definitely connections to the middle school and high school and even into our elective special areas. So to give you some perspective, I want to tell you about Joplin. Some of you may be from Joplin and very familiar with these data facts. Others, you may be from around the nation or international, and you may not really know the community that you're attending, the greater community. I will tell you, a public school system really represents the community in which you live. So these data facts will really kind of help you understand in general as a community what we navigate. So our enrollment, over time, we sit around 7,500 students. You can kind of see down at the bottom, obviously post-tornado after 2011, you see that big dip. But in general, we kind of live around that 7,500. This is a September count date, so you don't see this year on there yet. But we try to use the same point in time every year so we can get a really good idea of what our trend lines look like with enrollment. So we're a pretty large district. Our student mobility, so this is how our kids move. Specific to elementary, that's what this slide is focusing on. But as a district, 1 in 3 of our kids move buildings every year. And so what does that mean? If you student teach for us in Joplin, when you start with your class the first day of school, you're probably going to lose a kid or you're going to gain a kid by the time you graduate at semester. We have a pretty mobile population. We have 10 elementary schools, and you can kind of see where everybody's at based on those different elementary schools. But I will tell you collectively, and you can kind of see the Joplin trend line there. I will tell you collectively, we're way over the state average on mobility. There's a lot of reasons for that, but the mobility has a huge play into what we had to decide to do as a school district. If you think about your kids who move all across whether it's in the city or out of the city, we lose a lot of ground on some of our most at-risk kids, because if 10 buildings are doing 10 different things, it's really hard to pick them up where they left off. Free and reduced lunch. So these are our students on either free or reduced lunch based on income. This just kind of shows you where Joplin is in that spectrum. You see the Missouri average. Those other 4 that are blank are nearby districts. Those are the big 4 in our immediate area. Carthage, Neosho, Carl Junction, Carthage, I already said Carthage, Webb City, Carthage, Carl, Webb City, Neosho. Those are the other big 4 on there. So you can kind of see as far as the poverty that we serve a pretty large poverty level, and we're definitely way above the state average on that. So it just brings different factors for us when we're talking about how we're addressing literacy and where our kids are coming in at a lot of times. And then special education has another layer for us. So out of and you think about the enrollment, 7,500 kids, out of those 7,500, about 1,200 have an identified disability. So we serve a lot of students with varied special needs. That could be anything from a learning disability in reading or math or writing, all the way to our multi-handicapped students who are nonverbal and everything in between. So we serve a pretty large special education population. Again, kind of the trend and the theme, we're above the state average on our identification rate of our special education students. So when you layer all of these things together, I'm going to go back. Yeah. When you layer all of these things together, we really had to think as a system, and you can kind of get the picture. We're dealing with a pretty at-risk population when you think of a high SPED rate, a high poverty rate, a high mobility rate. And if you have any background into some of those categories, you have a lower vocabulary, you typically have a lower lexile level, you have a lot of factors that are keeping you from obtaining some of those literacy skills. So for a very long time, we were very busy doing a lot of things. And so kind of where we came to a system is, do we have a good understanding of literacy in general? So there's a lot of research behind our own clarity. So your clarity, if you have no idea, if you're going to teach first grade and you have no idea about how kids learn to read, it's going to be really hard for you to deliver that content to those kids. All new teachers are going to have to start somewhere, and you're going to have to learn. But we had a huge gap in understanding just our own literacy knowledge. And so what we did is we kind of went on a journey, and I'm going to ask you this next question that really drove where we were going. Trying to find, Libby, can you go to the next slide for me? Was there one before this, or did I mess that up? Nope. Okay. It may be after this. So I'm just curious to know, and my elementary people, you're obviously going to have more to talk about than maybe our secondary. When you look at this continuum, would you rate yourself a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8? And you can kind of look at those different statements. What's letters? That's why I'm here. I've heard about it. I'm familiar. I'm involved, but I've not actually taken it. And then I've completed volume 1. I've done 1 and 2. I'm a facilitator. Or number 8, you might take over if somebody is in here in a number 8. And thank you those on the chat also putting that in. And my people on the chat, could you just tell us where you're from and what your role is? Just so I kind of know who else is in the room and make it meaningful for you. Okay, cool. Thank you, Megan. Well, Carl party over there. Okay, and in the room, let me see kind of where you guys are. You probably already showed me, but I didn't have your picture up. So lots of ones. Okay, so a wide range. Letters is essentially, and Libby, if you want to go to the next slide, I think it's on the next one here. Letters is literacy essentials for teachers of reading and spelling. So it is a research-based professional development. Really the goal is for us was to improve knowledge and skills and promote evidence-based practices. So we went on a little journey of engaging in the Letters Literacy Initiative. This was before what I would call it became trendy. So those of you who are in Southern right now, the more you get into the school system, you'll hear a lot of things across the state level about letters. And I know you have professors that and teachers who have been through the training, but it is essentially all professional development. So as a system, we took a huge investment into having our teachers go through this work. Very similar to what you're doing in class right now. This is essentially graduate level content of really helping us break down and understand just the concept of reading and the factors that go into that. And a lot of things that you have been introduced to in classes, I'm sure, but it goes really, really deep and teaches you a lot of content in a very short amount of time.
And Dr. Monge, if I could just let you know kind of where our students are, we have some that are pre-junior block, so they haven't really been introduced into their lit block or their content area lit yet. And then some had shown 2s and 3s on that. And those students would be in lit block 1 or lit block 2 or our content area lit. And content area lit is for all secondary and K-12 students. And then our lit block 1 and 2 is for our elementary ed major. So they are learning about letters within our program for sure before they get out to you guys.
Cool. So if you have not been in your lit block yet, my advice to you would be pay attention and ask lots of questions, because you can learn a lot from our teachers and even our ladies who are online from Carl. There's a lot you can learn from literacy intervention teachers. So for us, and this next chart, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it because it's not all applicable. It may be for some of our people online, but we essentially, prior to 2019, as a district, we were in what I call intervention soup and a title lifer. So title is an opportunity. It's basically federal funding where we have specific teachers who are interventionists, and they try to serve our elementary students who are not reading, who aren't successful with reading, and we identify that through some data points. We had for a long time, once a title kid, always a title kid. Like once you got into that intervention service, you never really got out. And if you guys are familiar with how tiers of systems of support work, you really shouldn't be in there to stay. You should be in there to remediate some skills and get out and move on. But we were having a hard time getting our kids to move beyond needing those services. Well, what we came to find out with a high mobility in 10 schools doing 10 different things, we weren't systematic in our journey. So we took a huge investment into letters and we took the professional development route. It's really easy to think that, And this could be your principal giving you something, your superintendent, your teaching partner, it doesn't matter. They're going to say, here, do this thing. And if you do this thing, then your kids are going to learn. And there's some truth to some consistency and systems and having some of those cookie cutter type of approaches. The problem is if you personally do not have clarity in what you are teaching and doing and what you should expect kids to know and be able to do, then there's really not a magic bullet that's going to solve that for you. And so that's kind of what we got into and really investing. We put a lot of energy into training our teachers with this professional knowledge. So we did the why before we got to the how. And so once we started getting an understanding of the why of everybody having some common language of literacy, then we got into the how, and Libby will kind of talk you through just our current system of what we do in Joplin, of how we've addressed the mobility and kind of where our non-readers are.
Okay, so once we figured out that Letters was going to be giving us the why behind how our students are learning to read, our teachers came to us and were very vocal, and this is awesome knowledge. It's stuff that I feel like I didn't know before to help my students become successful, but I need something to aid in how do I make this happen for my kids. So after some digging, a school came to us and said, hey, there's this program that we want to look into because we feel like it will give us the how for our students. And so you'll see a lot of things referenced in 95% group, but that's only because our teachers came to us and saying this would be a good resource to help us get the knowledge that we already know into the hands of our students. So we dug really deep into phonological awareness, and this kind of just shows you the continuum of how students learn phonological awareness to help them become successful readers. So this is like really early stages past the oral language, really early stages of kids learning how to read. And so you'll notice that that stair step goes from like words in a sentence all the way up to taking phonemes and deleting them and adding them and having substitution of phonemes, just so they can start manipulating sounds and words.
Libby, can I pause you there?
Yeah.
Those of you in the room at Southern, I want you to think about your classroom. So picture yourself as a teacher in your classroom. Phonemic awareness is all auditory. So it has nothing to do with what kids do on paper. It's all about what they're hearing. So when you see some of those words, and you may not be familiar with a lot of those words, one of the huge pieces that can support reading development, even if you are a PE teacher, how do kids engage in conversation? So oral language development is a huge component when you start talking about phonological awareness. We have these same conversations all the way down to early childhood as we're trying to get kids into the system. The more our kids are developing oral language and they're hearing and they're able to manipulate different kinds of sounds in words, that has a huge precursor into their development. And this phonological awareness is one piece. And if you've had your literacy class yet, you know it's one of the big five. It is one that we as a system realized how much we really just weren't paying attention to it. So no matter where you are in your content, you don't ever sell short the ability to have kids conversing, talking, speaking, and developing even vocabulary, which all helps at the end of the day. Sorry, just had to add that piece.
No, you're totally fine. So, yeah, it was a big eye opener that we weren't spending a whole lot of time with students on this area of literacy. So as we got better in understanding what it takes to produce a good reader, that became apparent. And then you move on to phonics, which we also did not have any rhyme or reason in what we were doing with phonics. It was more of, hey, our kids can't read, so maybe it's phonics and we'll just pull things together. But there's actually rhyme and reason to how students build upon those skills. And you'll see here, the red boxes are things that first graders should be able to do by the end of first grade, and how they build on each other along with second grade and then third grade as well. So you move from simple to complex meaning starting at CVC words and then moving all the way to multisyllabic words, which has been a game changer as well, because now we can identify students that need assistance in those specific areas.
And just to make that applicable, if you are a secondary teacher in the room, if you have elementary students who build a multisyllabic word attack approach, their ability to really dissect those complicated scientific words is a game changer. And so the work we have going on right now in our third, fourth, especially our fourth and fifth grade, our middle school teachers are stoked to see those kids come up through the system because they're getting more tools in their tool belt. So if you are a secondary teacher in the room and you're like, I don't know what I would do with this, just Google syllable types and just look up the different syllable types and how you can use that concept to help kids break down words that often are very difficult for them to be able to work with when you're talking about multisyllabic words.
So then from there, when we talked about how do we help these kiddos that are not kind of getting it with their peers, and we've provided them some alternate ways of helping, and we had to figure out how are we going to make that work in our large district. So we created a flow chart that allowed us to look at a universal screener, which is our DIBELS assessment, and then kind of filter students' scores based on that and where we would put them in the deficit that we found. So you'll see all kinds of acronyms. You guys know by now, education loves acronyms, but like PSF is phoneme segmentation fluency. So depending on their total overall score, DIBELS score, that goes into a formula, they then can see, is it the phoneme segmentation that is low, and how can we help them? And then we run them through another diagnostic assessment to really figure out those skills that I showed you in the previous slides, and how can we help kind of plug those skills so that they can move on in the continuum of reading. So that just kind of shows you the beginning of the year, and then it changes come mid-year just because we know we should be progressing students, and then end of year as well. So from the data, we're constantly looking at data to make decisions for kiddos. But as we look at the data over the last couple of years, here's just some bullet points on what the data actually has told us and how we can move forward. So we're still learning. Our teachers are still learning, and we're still trying to navigate where kids are at and how we can help them. But you'll notice just some of these points that by the end of kindergarten, 75 to 80% are now benchmarking on phonemic awareness. So that means that they're doing well and they're meeting that grade level expectation. But we also know that there's still some explicit instruction on how do we blend those sounds together that needs to happen in kindergarten. So we're putting forth effort in how do we figure out to make sure that that is occurring for our kindergartners so that they are prepared for first grade. Dr. Mwangi, I feel like you wanted to say something.
No, I talk too much. The first bullet was huge for us. So you don't know until you start digging into data. And what we found, I have a moth on my computer. That's weird. Sorry, guys. You can't see it, but it's driving me nuts. We started pulling some data on our kindergarten entry and where our kids were coming from. And it was a kind of like the mobility data fact. It was a huge eye-opener for our system. 1 and 2 of our incoming kindergartners had no early learning. That includes daycare, not a formal daycare. They're either home with parents or, a family friend or somebody's keeping them. So for them to come straight into the system without an early learning background, that has a huge implication when we're talking about their phonemic awareness. Can they rhyme words? Can they hear the sounds of different words? Do they know how to break words apart? And all of that is just the oral language development and what they're hearing. And so we knew that we had to have a really strong emphasis on that piece. But what we're finding is we've been really intentional. I think this is the kind of the big idea for you. We've been very intentional and we've been very systematic in what we're doing, and we're seeing the results of it. So when you're feeling like you're not making momentum, whether that's as a teacher or whether that's as a system, when you feel like you're not making momentum when you're looking at data, you first have to ask yourself, are you being strategic and systematic? And then the other part, if we kind of just flip to the next few slides, because I know we're going to be close to running out of time. This is my favorite acronym. One of our professional colleagues that we've worked with shared this with us. And so I have to show this every time we get a chance. This is a progress monitoring data line, and you can see this is back from 19. But these are data points, every one of those dates on the bottom, these are data points on kids of where they're at in their, these were all kids identified for intervention. And this was at the very beginning of our work with literacy. If you notice how those trend lines look, they're skyrocketing, right? Like they're shooting straight up with how these kids are performing. You see the one in red, he kind of plateaus there a couple of times, or she, but for the most part, these trend lines are skyrocketing. So we jokingly called this, it's a classic ABT. Everybody know what ABT stands for? Ain't been taught. So it was a huge, we were seeing kids who we were serving through intervention who really were just lacking general classroom foundational solid instruction that was systematic for what we needed kids to know and be able to do. So there was a huge piece of teacher clarity to a lot of this data. And I think that's the message that I would send with you. You may not spend a ton of time digging into what are you expected to teach students and what do those standards really mean. It tells you a whole lot. And when you're talking about literacy, even if you're a science teacher or social studies teacher, you're going to see standards within your expectations for whatever course you're teaching that has some sort of literacy component to it. And do we have clarity as teachers of what that's asking us to know and be able to do? Because sometimes it's as simple as making sure that our tier 1 instruction is really, really solid. So really the next couple of slides here, and we won't have time to get into them, but really how we have shifted our system is not because Libby and Sarah have sat here and told people what to do and it just magically happened. A lot of this was teachers coming to the table and us really just empowering them and helping us build capacity. So this was definitely when you know better, you do better. And as teachers started gaining this knowledge, you're going to hear at noon, Dr. Tolman. She actually, on our journey, we took a group of teachers through letters facilitation, and we just made some bold moves. But that cohort of about 30 really is what made this possible to be where we're at today as a district. And we were fortunate enough that Dr. Tolman trained them in volume 2, which is a ton of the comprehension side of reading. And so, you know, my encouragement to you, whether you're in Carl online and you're in your, you know, intervention systems of reflecting what that is, or you're Missouri Southern and you're a student and you're just getting into the field of education, there is a lot to be said on teachers helping carry the message of the things that you're learning. And so wherever you're at in that journey, don't underestimate, oh, I'm just a title teacher or I'm just a brand new teacher, because our work really has really come from the teacher grassroots effort of us just knowing better, so we're doing better. And there's a lot to be said with that. You have anything you want to add, Libby, to that?
Sounds great. But I do think that they're getting ready to go see Dr. Tolman. So
I think that is coming up. She's kind of a legend, guys. We made shirts that said, "I love Dr. Tolman," one of our days with her. And that was during COVID. How she survived all that with us virtually online. I don't know how we did it, but we did. She's awesome though. You'll enjoy her. Any questions for us? And Carrie and Megan and those online, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can email or reach out to us. So we went through it pretty quick, but in general, don't underestimate your ability to influence, especially as you're learning a lot of this content that some of us may not have received when we were in your shoes. Okay.
Can you hear me?
And on
there.
time.
We just want to thank you so much. Here is the neat thing that we love our partnerships with our school districts, and we know we've got Monette on there and Carl Junction, so shout out to you guys too. But it is so awesome that we have some of our faculty who have been through letters training, and so they're bringing it to the students, and now the students actually get to see it in real life. Where when they do get out there, they're going to be seeing and participating in the same things with you guys as well. So we are very fortunate to have you guys. We're fortunate to have our instructors who have gone through this training as well. And then we're fortunate to have Missouri Southern students who are out there ready to become teachers in the future. So we just want to give you guys a round of applause for sure. So let's do that. And again, we thank you so much for everything that you brought to us. I noticed I asked them all to put things away, and then some were like, hey, can I take notes? I'm like, oh, yeah, take notes. Anyway, so we are very excited for you guys also, all of you school districts, to start seeing these students come out there with this, the vocabulary ready to go, and then just the knowledge of it too, and all the practice that they'll get to for you guys, plus your observations with you guys and the teachers doing it at this point in time too. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.